Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Mentoring Minute with Dan Comeau. We'll be back to meet with Dan, but first, let's hear from our podcast sponsors. Hey, we want to thank all of our sponsors, starting with Final Forms. Final Forms is the industry leader in forms, but for more information, go to finalforms.com/Jake. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to find out more about their great products. Violet Defense is also a great sponsor. Go to violetdefense.com and find out about their great products using ultraviolet light and technology. We also want to thank Huddle. When we talk about Huddle, we're talking about sports. Go to huddle.com for more information. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com for more information. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com to get started with your digital Wall of Fame tribute. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Go to athleticsurveys.com or call them at 800-738-6466 to get started. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Mentoring Minute with Dan Comeau. Dan's a longtime athletic director here in Florida. He's currently the chair of our mentoring committee for the FIAAA, also very involved at the national level with mentoring programs. Dan, welcome. And what do you have for us today?
Well, I was looking and I was actually contacted by Seth King from Memphis and Stephen Fine from the Elkins district over the past week, wanting to know about Coaches Handbooks. And I guess I saw an article about them, and they wanted to know what's the best way, how to proceed on putting a coach's handbook together. I don't have one because I'm retired. I have a retired handbook for me. But if you Google coaches handbooks at the high school level, there are many online that you can take ideas from. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And they're from county based, and they're very elaborate, from Eugene School District in Portland, in Oregon, and all the way down to school-based coaches handbooks. And there are some rural areas where they don't have a district. It's just one high school, and that high school puts that handbook on. But after the break, I want to talk about the objectives of a handbook and how it can make your job easier and more consistent with coaches.
Yeah, another great topic, Dan, and you brought up two very good points. One is you really do need a handbook, and there's a lot of different ones out there, from that exhaustive, comprehensive, district, county manual to something that's very specific for your program. And, you as an AD, you have to find the right one for you and your coaches and your program. So great stuff. Looking forward to it. We're going to take a quick break, hear from a couple of our sponsors. This is the Educational AD Podcast with the Mentoring Minute. We want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support of the Mentoring Minute. It's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year while creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Find out exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. We also want to thank Final Forms for their support of the podcast. Final Forms is the leader in athletic registration, but you got to know this. Final Forms is more than just forms. It's a team, it's technology, and it's a service that serves your schools with compliance, with communication, and risk management. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility, reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that are involved in athletics. Final Forms can also help with certification management for coaches, and for ADs, it can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. Plus, it has secure language translation and ADA compliance. You know, it's time for you to talk with a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps, find out what Final Forms can do for you. Go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to find out exactly what the Final Forms team can do for you. All right, welcome back to the Mentoring Minute with Dan Comeau. Dan, you were going to give us some tips about putting together a coach's handbook.
Yeah, Jake, you know, it's something that you really don't have to reinvent the wheel on. There are models out there that that you can find if you just Google high school coaches handbooks. But I would suggest that it's 3-tier. I think you should have a statement from the National Code of Ethics from the NFHS, and then go down to your state or local district level. Give a statement about the objectives of that group. And then most importantly, from your school, state the objectives. And when you do that, it gives a sense of focus and direction for your athletic department. And it shows a little bit of professionalism that you've got a handle on things, and the coaches are going to be able to be consistent on what they do. I think there's 2 main areas that need to be talked about in a coach's handbook. One is the responsibilities of the coach. You know, so making sure that they have their certification classes done, their, you know, concussion, heat, and those types of classes. And every state is different. Some states require heat. I'm sure that Maine does not require heat, but they may. It still gets hot in Maine. You know, our parent meetings, make sure that all your coaches know that it is their responsibility to have a parent meeting before and maybe even after the season to discuss things that have happened. Purchasing equipment, make sure that your coaches have a consistent and concise procedure on how to purchase equipment. We had a situation where a parent bought T-shirts for our coaches, and it was a bar that was sponsoring the T-shirts, and you know, principal didn't know it, I didn't know it, and we said, thanks for buying the T-shirts, but they're not going to be given out to the kids. People just don't think sometimes. Supervision, make sure that supervision is clear and concise. You don't leave a student alone at a venue and go home with a student still there or an athlete still there. Talk about transportation. How do we get kids to and from games? If it's local, you want to use a bus. If buses aren't available or it's not conducive, what are your options? Discipline and sportsmanship, I think, need to be brought up as a coaching code of ethics. Tell you, in 1996, I was kind of a new AD, and when I took over the program, one of our soccer coaches, he was off campus, and he would go have a cigarette under the bleachers, and he'd drive the kids around with cigarettes in the car. And they said, "Coach, you can't do that. This is high. It's educational based athletics. This is not AAU, or you just can't smoke." And in those days, it was a little bit different, and had to let him go because he just wouldn't stop doing it. So it's all in your priorities as a coach, I guess. And I think the other part of a coach's handbook is the administrative duties. Some coaches are great coaches and they just don't understand the administrative part, especially coaches that are not on campus. There's paperwork that has to be done. Make sure that they have a dress code as a coach. Make sure that they know about inventory and how to take an inventory and how to produce that to you and behavior of a coach. I think that's important to put that into perspective. And once you do that, you can have a chart when you evaluate the coach and have just like 4 basic things. He's distinguished in his process, he's proficient, he's basic, or he's unsatisfactory. And based on the clear and concise issues in a coach's handbook, you can evaluate the coaches. He knows what the rules were, you know what the rules were, and then evaluate accordingly. So that's all I have for today, Jake.
You know, again, you and I are both retired, but, you know, we worked, you know, many years as ADs, and I can certainly echo what you said, you know, the importance of having that document. Most of my career in Florida was at private schools. And so we had, you know, a school handbook, a faculty handbook, and our coaches handbook was actually a little bit thinner, but it allowed us to laser focus on some things that were very specific to athletics. And at the same time, allowed us a little bit of flexibility when talking about different things. But you're so right. You know, you have to have that in writing. And then you also have to share that information with the coaches. It just can't be a bound volume that's gathering dust up on your shelf. Everybody's got to know what's in the book. Dan, one of our listeners, oh, go ahead.
Years ago, we had a written book, and it was cumbersome. But in today's technology, you can put it on a computer and edit it at any time that you want. Social media, for example, that needs to be in the handbook. How to deal with social media with your kids. You know, there are things that have changed since 1997 to today that need to be in the handbook that we didn't even think of then.
And that's another great point, that the handbook, it needs to be that living, breathing document. It's kind of how you run the program. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more, get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
They can email me at dcomeau19@comcast.net.
Okay. Dan Comeau and the Mentoring Minute every week. Thanks so much for sharing, and you know, hope you'll come back again next week. For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews are uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel, so you can see all the episodes of the Mentoring Minute. We appreciate you tuning in today. Come back again next week for another episode of the Mentoring Minute with Dan Comeau. Once again, we want to thank all of our sponsors, including Final Forms, Sideline Interactive, Violet Defense, Huddle, Hometown Ticketing, Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack, and Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. Thank you so much for your support of the Mentoring Minute and the Educational AD Podcast.